What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Tonight we are back in the 6 Feet Under Fab shop, and we have some new equipment for the shop. We are going to be putting together a SWAG Off-Road tube bender. So I reached out to SWAG Off-Road, told them what I did here in the shop, and they were like, that's really cool, and they hooked me up with a tube bender. So shout out to SWAG Off-Road. That was really cool. And they have really comfortable t-shirts, by the way. I told them what I was going to be doing with it, and I told them what size tube and everything that I was going to be using, and they recommended the Rev 2 tube bender. And this is everything that comes inside of the box. So it looks pretty complicated, and it somewhat is, but it's basically, you have your large arms right here, and then you have your smaller arms right there. Then you have your clamp for your ram. And this is what a lot of people call the air over hydraulic ram. It does have the attachment, so if you wanted to use it manually, you absolutely can. And then you have your dies right there. You have your degree finder. You have your elastic pullback cable. And then some hardware right there. So it's pretty cool. The only thing that it does not come with is something to mount it to. So I've seen a lot of guys, they'll put it in a vise. Where's my vise? Right there, somewhere. Yeah, over there. So I've seen guys put it in a vise, and I've seen some people build metal tables and everything like that. Or they build stands for them to go on, but I really want this to be mobile. I want to be able to pull this around the shop. That way, if I have a Jeep right here that I'm working on, I can pull it, into the other bay or vice versa. So I started thinking, I want something portable, I want something affordable, and I want something that is really convenient, because I don't want to custom build a table and then it suck and then I hate it, and that would be really aggravating. So this is what I came up with. So I put my thinking cap on, and I really wanted something that had wheels and that possibly had a drawer and then had storage so that I could put different supplies like, WD-40, something like a tape measure or something like a degree finder, something with a drawer would be really cool. So I went down to my local Harbor Freight and I got one of these. So this is the 30-inch one-drawer service cart from US General. They only had orange, so I'm not mad about that. But I was like, this would be perfect, except for it's got super thin, Chinese metal. And I was like, you know what? I can figure out something to make that work. So this is what I got. So what I did was I went and got some. This is a little bit thicker than 3/16 whenever I measured it. And let's see, you can see the thickness. But I mean, it's right at 3/16, just a little bit thicker. And I cut a piece this size right here. And then, I don't know if you'll be able to see, but on the inside up there, I put a piece on the bottom and then drilled 4 holes. And so what I did was I just sandwiched the table together, and I don't think it's going anywhere. So then I found some Reese hitch material and then some really thick DOM metal. This was an old track bar. And then I had some Barnes four-wheel drive gussets that I just welded all on. And I think that's going to be pretty solid. Then of course I painted it with Steelit, so that way when I start bending, if I ever see an issue or anything like that, all I have to do is just come back in and put some more gussets. I may have to put another one right here, just coming all the way this way, but I don't know. I think it's pretty solid, but we'll have to see whenever I start bending tube if there's going to be any issues with that. Full disclosure, I have never put one of these together. I've never even used a SWAG off-road bender. I've only used the ones that you actually had to manually do. So this is going to be a learning experience, but I figured if you're in the market for one of these tube benders and you've never used a SWAG Off-Road Rev 2 model, then this will be a good video for you to watch. So the first thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and get the arms on here. And this stuff is really, really heavy, which is good. So it's going to fit right on top of that. Look at there. It's pretty solid. Run over a zip tie. Go ahead and take this clamp apart. Alright, so what I'm doing is I left the bottom 2 bolts out and I'm putting the top 2 bolts back in. That way I can just slide the ram into it. So I'm just going to leave it just like that. Now I'm going to grab the ram. And when you're putting this in, make sure that you put the relief valve, make sure you put that facing up. So this is a gravity fed ram and it won't work right if you spin it any other way. So I'm going to pop that in. Should hold. Now there is a certain spot that you have to put this, and making sure that all of this is good. Now I can take the bottom bolts and go ahead and tighten this up pretty good. I am going to put just a wee bit of anti-seize on the threads of these bolts. Just a little bit. Just in case I ever have to service the ram or something like that. So just a little bit on there. Just like that. Next thing that I'm going to do is spin this shaft and come over here, and then I'm going to drop this clevis pin right there. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be taking off this handle point right here, and I'll show you why. So it's got little clips that come out of it. Just like so. Take these off. So I'm going to hold on to this just in case. Put it in a little handy dandy drawer right there. So now I'm going to take the elastic return spring that comes in the kit right here, and I'm going to be putting it in place right there at the bottom so that it's got a force that makes it want to return. On this elastic pullback strap here, it does have 2 carabiners. It's got a big one, it's got a smaller one, so I'm going to be putting the smaller one on the ram end right here. I'm going to try to show you what I did. I kind of had to back up a little bit. So what I ended up doing was taking this bolt out right here, the closest one to the drop pin, and then I ran the large carabiner through, and now I'll take this one right here and pull onto the ram. So you kind of got to manhandle it a little bit. Just like that. And I'm actually going to spin it around that way let's see if I can get you to see, that way the smaller end is wrapped around that washer, that way it won't fly off and hit me in the stomach or something like that. So I feel good about that. I've just got it ran through right there just like the directions say. I've got the small end of the carabiner being held on by the pin and the washer, and then this one is held by the bolt, so I know it's not coming off. All right, what's next? Next thing is the degree finder. So I've got that right here. And it looks like I take this metal plate. It goes this way. These bolts right there with the square holes. Drop those in there. And then on the back side of them, it comes with 5 of these little plastic washers. So I'm going to put those on. Just like that. Now I can take my degree finder, drop it all on, make sure it's good. I'll flip it over. So it's got some adjustment in there, that way you can kind of fine tune it, you know, because you want to start from 0. On the back side here, this side gets a nylon washer, and also this side. And then it comes with some locking nuts. And then on this side, you do not put a nylon washer. You just put the handle on. So now I'll just snug these up just a little bit. On the other side of the tube bender, it's got 3 Allen head bolts that you need to take out. Just like that. And then this collar comes off right here. Line the collar up with your degree finder. And push the bolt buck up into it. Now I'll take the other 2 bolts and run those up. And then you just tighten those up. Now I'm ready to install the die. So this is an 1 3/4 inch die. This is pretty much, you know, stuff for your roll cages and other bumpers and stuff like that. So I'm going to slide this in this way. Just like that. Get the hole lined up. Then I'm going to take one of these big boys. I did put a little bit of WD-40 on it. Just going to drop that in like that. I need to make sure that it seats all the way. Alright, now I'm going to get that spun around just like that. So now that I have the die in, you can see right here that it has 2 holes, and what those holes are is for the indicator for the degree finder. So I'm just going to pop these in just like so. And I'm sorry if y'all hear the birds outside, probably fighting. Pick that up just a little bit, that way it don't scratch the gauge finder. All right, now I'm going to get those tightened up. So now I'm going to take another pin and drop in right there. That way it connects that to the main part of the arm. Now I can spin it like that. So the other part of the die is right here, and I'm just going to drop it in. We'll just drop it in for right there. So you can see, I did spin it around, but you can see that's where the tube will go in. And those 2, then you can pick this up right there. And then we'll take this piece right here and we'll drop it on just like that. And then of course, you know, whenever I get the tube in, tighten this up onto the tube. One of the last things that I'll do is right here on the ram, on the pressure release. SWAG even has this Sick little knob. It's got like a magnet. Look at that. That is sick. And the last thing that I'm going to do is probably what I should have done to begin with. Is right here. There's a bolt that goes in, and it just holds pressure to whatever mount that you have made. Like I said, I probably should have done that first, but it's all good. And that's just going to keep it stationary and make sure it don't fly off or anything weird. And what's really cool is that I also have a drawer right here that I can put random stuff like a angle finder like that. So you know, if I'm looking for an angle and I can't quite figure it out, just pop that on, it'll tell me what it is. I also got one of these pipe masters for 1 3/4 inch tubing, so that way if I have to come in at a degree, I can just kind of push it like that, and then I know what angle that I need to cut my tube at. So that's pretty cool. You know, if you got to come in from this way, or so say right here, say if I wanted to come in at an angle or something like that, I just push it like so, and then it kind of gives me a measurement of where I need to cut, or you know, if I was coming in at an angle or something like that. I don't know, pretty cool. Never used one, so pretty excited about that. I've always just had to guess in the past. So one of my first experiences with a tube bender, I made this grill guard for the LJ, and it's 1 3/4 inch tubing. It was pretty simple, nice little project. But the tube bender that I was using was definitely not that nice, and it was more of a chore than anything else. But overall, I think it turned out pretty good. So it is about a week later since I last filmed anything on the tube bender. But as you can see, I have the Gladiator in the shop. And so I also have, where's it at? Some DOM. So what I have is about 100 feet of DOM. This is 1 3/4 outside diameter with a .120 wall. And this is pretty much your standard roll cage stuff, stinger stuff, and then sliders. So I was trying to think of something simple that I could do just to kind of show you how easy it is to bend tubes with this SWAG off-road tube bender. And let me show you what I've come up with. So this is my 2020 Jeep Gladiator. I did install some Rubicon rock guards or sliders on here, and I want to put some kind of rub rail. So I want something just to come out a little bit, and maybe this far right here, and just run all the way down. That way it'll keep me off of trees. Like right here where I broke my soft top, it probably could have prevented that, but I also want to make it where it's kind of like a little step for the kiddos. So and now I'm just going to test it just to make sure that it works. It works. So now what I'll do is just release it right there, and then the pullback strap is working, and it'll bring it back to where it needs to be. So that's cool that it works. So now I'll get a piece of tube in. Got my tube right here. I'm just gonna leave it right there for right now because I need to spray this down with some WD-40. That way it doesn't want to kink or bind or anything in there. Alright, good enough. So I'm just gonna take my tube, just like that. You can see here I've got the tube where it needs to be. Now I can tighten this up That way it's just applying force on that. Just gonna tighten this up. All right. Everything is seated. All right, looks like we're ready for our first bend. So I need to make sure that this is at 0, and looks like it's a little before it, so I can reach up under here and loosen this up just a little bit, and then I can come up top and move it ever so slightly. Now it is dead on 0. I've got it sprayed with WD-40, so I think we're ready for our first bend. So obviously before I start bending, I need to figure out what I'm going to bend to, and I have some scrap pieces of tube. It's always good to keep little random bends like this. I can't remember what degree this one is, but this is pretty much what I'm looking for. I want to be able to weld, cut this down right there, and so that it sits, right along something like that, maybe like a 1.5 inch gap in between it. So I'm gonna start with this bend right here. So it looks like this bend right here is about a 30-degree bend, and so that's where I'm gonna start, is 30 degrees. So something else that I like to use, I've actually never had one this nice, but this is basically a plane finder, just to make sure that whenever you make your bends, you make them on the same plane. And what that means is, say if I make a 30-degree bend right here, and then I roll the tube all the way through, and that curve banks down a little bit, and I bend the other 30 degrees, well, whenever I lay it on the ground, it's going to be wobbly because it's not on the same plane. Basically, it just keeps the center of the tube facing up at all times. Or it doesn't keep it that way. It makes you know before you make your bend what plane that it's on, which is really convenient. So basically, you just clamp it to the center of the top of the tube, and then you can cut it on and zero it out. And then you can take a marker, and I like to do arrows. That way it's the center of the arrow. So if you put a line, you don't know if it's on this side of the line, that side of the line, this side or that side, but with an arrow, you know it's dead center of the little arrow. All right, so I verified that everything is tight and seated and lubricated the way it's supposed to be. So I'm starting at 0 right here on my dial indicator. And I'm going to come up to about 33, 32 degrees because there will be some kickback. So if you've ever seen anybody, bending tube, you know that there is some kickback. So kickback is when you bend the tube to a certain degree, and it actually comes back about 2 or 3 degrees depending on the setup. And I think I've read on here that this one's like 2 degrees or something like that. So we'll go to about 32, and then we'll see what we got. Man, it bent that tube like it was nothing. So now I'm going to release the pressure on the ram, and we can see the kickback. That's the nicest tube bender I've ever used. So now what I can do is I can start loosening these bolts up right here and go ahead and get the tube out. I'm going to leave my degree finder, where's it at? Right there. So I'm going to leave my degree finder where it's at. I've already got it marked, but still I'm just gonna leave it. And then that way, whenever I bend the backside, I know exactly where I need to put it. I went ahead and pulled the Rubicon rock slider off of the Gladiator. And as you can see right here, the sliders are not perfectly in line. So the tube is straight other than the 30 degree at the front. But look, you see how it kicks back right there towards the rear of the vehicle. So what I plan on doing is I'm going to keep the tube straight. Personally, I kind of like when the rub rails kind of go out on an angle. So that's going to be perfect for what I'm after. Just kind of bring in that tube, you know, I'll put another 30 right there to come in. And then of course I'll put tubes in between it all just to strengthen it up. But like I said, these really aren't going to be rock sliders. They're mainly for rub rails and steps for the kids. So now I have everything set up back in the tube bender. Got everything tightened up. Verified all my pins are good. Everything is tight. I've got my mark right here. I am in the plane of bend that I'm looking for. And I believe we are ready to bend the second piece, or the second bend. So this is what I have as of right now. You can see I've got the 30 there, the 30 bend there, and I'm gonna have to figure out exactly what I'm gonna do with this, with the curvature of the slider there. So probably gonna have to do a couple of measurements and everything like that, so that way I make it look as nice as possible. And it's not too far out and it's not too far in. So I've got to kind of figure out my cuts and everything there. So I really don't like cutting videos into parts, but I'm probably going to have to stop this video right here just because I don't want this video getting too terribly long. But anyway, guys, I really appreciate y'all watching me put together this SWAG off-road tube bender. It was super simple to put together, and it was even easier to bend tube, which is really what you want whenever you're bending tube. You want it just to be as simple as possible, and SWAG Off-Road knocked it out of the park with this setup right here. If you would like to get one for your shop, make sure that you check out SWAG Off-Road. Huge shout out to them for making this video happen. They are a supporter of the channel, and I really appreciate all their awesome products and all of their support. And if you are a low buck guy like me, like this is just behind my house, it's not anything extravagant, you might say, well, I really don't have, you know, the funds and everything for this. I can't justify getting one. But honestly, if you could knock out a couple of small projects for yourself or for your buddies or, you know, anything like that, this thing will pay for itself in no time. So I have a lot of practicing to do. Like I said, I've never used one like this. I've just always used like a manual one. So I'm really hoping to get pretty good at bending tube. And you can see here I've got a lot of tube. If you don't mind, hit that like button and make sure that you are